And so here I am with Everett Chew. He's a rising memory athlete, and he's did phenomenally well at the USA memory competition. And so thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here, Johnny.
And so I'm just going to ask you some questions just about memory in general, if it pertains to competition, to your life, to school, or pretty much wherever. And so let's first start off about tell me about yourself. Just tell me a little bit about
Okay.
yourself.
So I'm Everett. I'm 14. I live in Southern California. Um, I'm homeschooled, so I do a lot of my schoolwork at home, and I generally have a little more flexibility. So that's why I've been able to kind of pursue memory and memory competitions more.
Oh,
Outside of school, I really like sports, basketball, ping pong, ping pong or table tennis, and volleyball. And I'm also involved in a group called Trail Life, which is kind of like it's sort of like spin-off of Boy Scouts, but it's a lot of fun, and we do a lot of hiking and backpacking, and I'm really into hiking and backpacking too in my spare time. Outside of that, I think that's mostly it. I enjoy my favorite subjects are math and science, and
of
I'm
course.
not sure what I want to go into, but hopefully maybe something like computer science or business or something interesting later on.
Oh, that's awesome. So do you play any sports as a team? Like, are you actually a
Um,
part of a team?
I'm not in a league right now. I have practices once a week for basketball, and I take lessons from a table tennis coach, mostly because my brother really wanted to play, so I decided to
Yeah.
kind of join in on the phone. So yeah, not on a team yet, but hopefully maybe next year for basketball.
Okay. And so besides all that stuff, you spend your other time training, memory training, right?
I do. I normally I try to train about 30 minutes a day, 30 to 60 minutes a day, depending on time I have. So yeah, I think sometimes I think the cool thing about memory training is that whenever I'm not in the mood, I just can't train. So I only train when I actually feel like it. So that just makes it a lot more fun because if I'm not feeling like training, then my scores will just go way down. So yeah, I do train normally in the afternoon and evening after I finish my other things.
Okay, I totally understand that too. If you're just
Hmm.
not in the mood, everything just goes downhill. You're like, I
Yeah.
can't even see the images. Like, why am I even doing this at all to begin with? So I totally understand that. And do you train more when you have a competition coming up? Like, do you ramp up the training?
Yeah, so I was planning to train about 30 minutes today after the USA Memory Championship last year, but I never really got to, and I kind of slacked off. So I haven't done really any training. I just trained maybe a little bit for the XMT qualifiers, and now I'm working a lot harder on it. So I'm consistently getting in, I think, 30 to 45 minutes. But as it gets closer, I'm still behind in something. So I'm going to probably have to ramp it up to maybe an hour and a half as the XMT gets near.
Okay. Because I know, and you probably know, some of the competitors they train like 3 hours, 4 hours, eight
Hmm.
hours a day. It's just a lot, you know. There's just a
Yeah,
lot of stuff to
yeah,
be
that's true.
training for.
I agree with. I know Alex Mullen, the world memory champion. He doesn't train a whole lot. He trains just maybe like 45 to an hour every day. So I agree with his philosophy that it's not really too important to like keep doing the same thing over and over again, but rather to train smartly. So I tend to focus on. I try to keep a log of my scores and
Hmm.
everything,
Hmm.
averages, and I tend to focus on what am I missing. So like I mark when I'm doing cards, for example, I'll take notes of all the cards that I keep messing up on, see what's kind of wrong. If I'm doing words, I try to see like why am I drawing a blank here? Like everyone says, okay, I drew a blank because my image wasn't strong enough, and that's like duh. So you got to think like why? Is it a bad image in the first place? Did you not make the connection right? Was it not visualized properly? So I think it's important for me at least. I try to just train smartly instead of
Hmm.
training more just to like kind of focus on what am I missing and just focus on those simple things. And once I correct those, then it just makes my scores go a lot higher.
And that's cool to hear because I kind of do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, of course, you missed something because you didn't see the image. But was it because that image didn't represent the word you were trying to memorize precisely? You know, did
Hmm.
you confuse luggage and suitcase together? And so things like that are probably the more important parts when it comes down to training, fixing the little tweaks you can
Yeah.
make.
Hmm.
And so that's incredible. That you do the same thing, you know. Like you said, a lot of people just probably like train, 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 and hopefully,
Hmm.
you know, it increases. Um, so how does your schedule look like? Like, do you train on things that you're having problems with one day, or is it always you try to get all of the different events in your training?
Well, I'm not exactly too organized in my training, but hopefully I'll start to become more sooner. So I try to do most of the. I'm training just really focusing on the X and T events at the moment, but I'm not sure if Florian is doing the MAA again. So if so, then I'll
Mhm.
probably have to start working on that. But right now I'm just focusing on XMT. So I try to do all the events every day except for numbers because I'm still working on my system. But basically, I do all the events every day. I try to do sometimes a safe run, sometimes a fast run. So I don't really have it completely organized, but yeah, I just try to even out my training and space it over, um, just space it out over the day. But
Mhm.
I think my the main way I try to improve is I try to find my safe score. So what can I hit 80% of the time? So this is for like cards and images. So if I can do the cards maybe 30 seconds, 80% of the time, then what I do is I try to maintain that and then slowly bring that time lower without losing that accuracy. So maybe I'll start experimenting around 27 seconds and try to keep that 80%. And then
Mhm.
I'll just try to bring that time lower and lower until I just really can't memorize any faster. So that's my approach right now. That's what I'm trying to do with a lot of the events. So I'm
Mhm.
just trying to be really consistent, like not messing up at all, just focusing on getting everything right. And then once I get that, then I slowly bring the time down. And I use for that to bring the time down, I use the plateau breaker method, which is where you just try to memorize like an insane amount as fast as possible. You make tons of errors, but if you do it like 10, 15 times, then eventually you'll find that like the accuracy just comes. It's kind of like magical, but it just comes. So
Yeah.
that's how I improve my speed. Speed isn't really a problem for me, but accuracy is. So trying to work on that more.
Of course, right. Accuracy is pretty much the pinnacle we're trying to reach,
Yeah.
doing like 10 seconds, but get the whole deck
hmm
perfectly. And so you're talking about you're working on your number system. What systems do you currently use for like cards and things like that?
Yeah. So for all events, I put two images per locus. So that means I have whatever the information. If it's two words, two cards, I use one image per card, one image per word, and I just link two at a time, and then I move on to the next location. Um, for cards, I use a simple one card system. So I have an image for every single card. So that was taken from my old PAO system. So I had person, action, object for every single card, but then I just stripped the P and the A and took the objects. So I just have a bunch of objects, and I mixed a few people in there,
Mm-hmm.
and what I just linked two at a time for that. One little thing about my card system is that I've done so many decks now that since there's like only two combinations that I can see, right? There's 52 cards times 52, so 2,704 possible combinations of two cards. Is that I've kind of like memorized a lot of the pairs. So sometimes when I see a pair, I don't even have to like try to link them together because I've seen it so many times that the images link
Mm.
together. So that's actually one thing I'm trying to experiment on. Like eventually I hope to have like a unique link between every single pair of cards because then when I'm memorizing, I won't have to create the links myself. I'll just have to maybe attach it to the location.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm experimenting in. So hopefully that'll be really helpful for cards. And then numbers, I'm working on a three-digit system. So I have 1,000 images for every single number 000 to 999. So I use consonant, vowel, consonant. So it was based off, I think, the Ben system. Ben Pridmore made it. So first number is a consonant, second is a vowel, third is a consonant. So then you get like maybe, so like 7, 1, 1 translates into CAT. So it could be a cat, for
Mm.
example. So I just have an image for that. So I'm just trying to learn my system and get quicker with it. I'm a little behind in working on it, but hopefully I'll get it done by XMT.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yep.
How long have you been doing memory competitions or like training for memory competitions?
Yeah, so I heard about memory techniques, I think in 2014. 2014, I found a TED Talk by Idris Zogaj and
Mm.
Joshua Foer, and those two really made me like want to pursue memory techniques more. So I got a book. Let's see, Moonwalking with Einstein. It's a great book. And then to learn, that was more like what is memory in general.
Mm.
But then to learn more of the specific techniques, I got Quantum Memory Power by Dominic O'Brien. So he got into a lot of like specifics on how to actually memorize certain things and like what systems to use.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really helpful. And then I decided to just start doing a little practicing of the competition events here and there. My mom encouraged me to participate in the USA Memory Championship later in 2015. So I think I started training for that in December because I didn't really want to go. I wasn't prepared at
Yeah.
all. So I just so I started training in December. So I think I trained for about maybe 4 months or so before the competition, and I used kind of like I didn't really know what I was doing, so I didn't train that smart. But I was just focusing on well, I generally had the same approach, like focus on your weaknesses and
Yeah.
use like the 80-20 rule of trying to achieve most of the results with as little work as possible. So yeah, I trained 4 months and I created a number system, a simple 2-digit system, and I kept my card system the same. So yeah, it turned out pretty good, and I was able to get fifth in the preliminary rounds at the USA Memory Championship, but I completely lost it in words. I don't know. I didn't practice that one too much. So yeah.
Well, you did phenomenal for only 4 months of training, right? Absolutely
hmm
phenomenal. What did you get for your speed cards?
I did it in 41 seconds. So
For
that was, I don't know, that was kind of luck. So when I train, well, I don't know if it was luck exactly, but when I train, when I'm in a competition, for some reason, I tend to rush. I notice. So the good thing is that when I rush, even if I'm rushing, I tend not to lose my accuracy. So for
Mhm.
the cards, my best was at the time, I think it was like 36 seconds in training, and I was planning the first time to have a safe score of about 45 to 47 seconds,
Mhm.
but then I don't know, my brain just rushed, so I did it in 41, and then I think I had to guess on two cards a little bit, but other than that, it was really smooth. So yeah, that was pretty fun to break the record, but your record,
Yeah.
but fortunately, Alex Lancer insane and did it faster than me. So hopefully, I'll maybe take it back one day.
Yeah,
But
hopefully you had it for that second.
yeah,
And then, oh,
hmm
but you did absolutely phenomenal. And
yeah,
so, and so you were saying that you initially got interested in, I guess, mnemonics and memory techniques because of Josh Forer and the other person. So your first, I guess, initial interest was in memory competitions, right? Like trying to,
um,
or was it in
kind
school?
it was kind of a mixture of both. So, I think one of them said in their TED talk that you could, if you train your memory for 2 weeks, you could know everything you need to know about memory, and you would be able to like memorize it like a card 5 minutes and everything. So I was like, wow, this seems like a really interesting and useful skill that I don't have to spend like a lot of time learning. So I think that's what got me interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really learn much about the memory competitions until I read the Moonwalking with Einstein book. So initially, I was just interested in improving my memory and helping out for school and other stuff. But I learned quickly that memory competitions are part of this, and it would be a lot
Yeah.
of fun. So that kind of was second, but it's definitely cool. Yeah.
And how has that changed, I guess, learning for you? Is it like completely different now? You like spent less time studying and stuff like
Um,
that?
yeah, so it's very helpful I have found for history, mostly in biology. Those are the subjects I'm taking, U.S. history and biology, because they do have a lot of memorizing in them. So
Mm-hmm. Yes.
normally before I would use rote repetition, just kind of
Ah,
repeat it over and over. I think that's what almost everyone does
yeah.
who doesn't know the memory techniques, and it was just painful before, but it was just like boring and not fun. So now with the memory techniques, it just makes everything a lot funner. So memorize terms, everything a lot easier. Yeah, history dates are pretty simple
Mm-hmm.
too. Just trying to, yeah, a lot of the subjects I do though, they don't require a whole lot of memorizing, but anything that does is pretty easy for me now. So it's definitely changed how I learn. It just kind of speeds it up a lot more, especially one thing I haven't done, but I really intend to do next year for my schoolwork is spaced repetition, which is kind
Mm.
of like scheduling your reviews so you don't review too much, but then you review the minimum amount of time where you can kind of keep the information straight in your head. So that's one thing I hope to incorporate next year into my schoolwork. But other than that, yeah, the mnemonics definitely help. They create really strong links between words and facts and anything, and it's just great. Yeah, it works amazingly for school.
And so I was kind of like the opposite because I found out like they can memorize cards and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
so I did, I think my first sec I memorized was 30 minutes. And I was just like so excited because I thought it was like impossible to do this if we were like a genius. And so eventually I started wondering like if you could memorize like a deck of cards in 5 minutes, learning, 20 vocabulary words isn't really that hard. If you could do, this.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I came kind of from the other way where I was like, if you got really good in like memorizing kind of useless information, useful information would be a lot simpler. And so I kind of went that method.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I actually did try to memorize was cards. So, I guess in that way, I think everyone likes the cards for some reason, but I think in that way, I was more hooked by the concept of just improving memory and doing cool
Mm-hmm.
memory stuff. Like initially, I just wanted to show off to my friends, like how cool I am and stuff. But in any case, it was yeah, the cards. I think the cards and maybe I don't know memorizing. I was good at words in the beginning, random words. Those two things just hooked me, and then from there, I think that was a platform I started to explore other uses of mnemonics. And I'm still not perfect in using them for school. I know I have to modify the techniques a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. I don't have a ton of memory palaces, like extra ones. So there are definitely things that I hope to improve. Like maybe I'll probably try to get some stuff prepared over the summer so it'll be a lot easier for my next school year. But yeah, I think it's really good. I think everyone should use it, at least try the mnemonics and method of loci and journey method just for memorizing school information. Just, yeah, I agree with you. It definitely helps a lot. And I don't think there's no better way to memorize than this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, why do you think people don't try doing mnemonics or memory techniques? Because a lot of people,
Hmm.
I talk to or people that see me do it, whatever, they think it's really cool, but they're like, I guess part of it is like they don't believe they could do it. You're like, I can't do it. But even when you show them, do this, they're like, nah. So like, why do you
Yeah.
think that is?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's interesting. I've kind of encountered that too. So I've performed. I think I've done memorized deck of cards for a few times for family and friends, and everyone is like, "Wow, that's so cool! Like, how do you do that? I can never do that." I think a lot of it is like, "Oh, wow, that's just crazy! I can't do that." So when you do something so insane that's like unheard of, then I think for me at least, for my friends and family, they kind of think it's wow, that's kind of out of my league. I wouldn't be able to do that, and they kind of fail some people overlook that you don't have to memorize a deck of cards in 1 minute to improve
Mm-hmm.
your memory. You just have to learn like some simple techniques that can greatly enhance like many other parts of your life. So I think I haven't done much teaching personally, but I hope to maybe as I get a little bit older, maybe when I find more time later in high school. But I think what I would try to focus on is like, hey, this stuff is really useful and it's not too difficult to learn as long as you're putting willing to put some work into it. So yeah, I think a lot of people are scared like, oh, well, I just can't do it or it's too difficult. Like, oh, I'd memorize some words, but I can't apply this to school. And I think a lot of people are kind of scared, but memory techniques are so like they have so many different possibilities, different things you can do with them. You can apply them to so many different things. Like I know you did cow patterns, that's crazy, but there's just so many different things you can do with them. I don't think there's too many limits on it. So I think as long as people keep seeing that like they can improve their memory, that it works specifically for them and
Mm-hmm.
whatever they want, like I think that'll greatly help people to kind of see like it's more practical. And yeah, I know when I tell people about memory competitions, they think, "Oh, wow, that's crazy." So if you, as long as I maybe focus more on like the practical aspects and how it can help people and whatever they want, then I think it'll hopefully become more popular. I know it is in other countries, and U.S. is a little behind, but hopefully it'll be more popular soon. Yeah, I know some people are like you, and others are pushing to get it into like have more people teach it. I think that's definitely cool, and it'll be great to have more people in memory competitions and just more aware
Yeah,
of this technique.
exactly. And that's just kind of the obstacle, just with people in general. It's like they need to, what they say, seeing is believing. It's
Hmm.
like, no, they can see it, they can believe it, but for them to believe it, they need to, I guess, experience it themselves,
Yeah,
firsthand. And the only way to do that is they have to try, right? They have to be
yeah,
willing to try. How else are you ever going to know if that's no, if it works for you or not?
yeah,
And so that's, something that people just need to give it a go, just go at it. Um, so I can clearly tell you're an advocate, memory techniques, mnemonics, go, they're the best.
Hmm.
What do you want to accomplish with I know like in school, of course, your degree, the job, stuff like that, but I guess in terms of memory competitions, what do you want to accomplish in the memory competition world?
Yeah. So I hope to be able to compete in memory competitions for quite a while. So um, first, I think my main goal is to kind of well, my dream goal is to become an international grandmaster of memory. So um, that's basically where you have to score 6,000 points in a competition and just meet some certain requirements. They're not too difficult as long as I train, but um, yeah, that's my main goal is to become an international grandmaster. I don't know. I originally wanted to be the best memorizer in the United States, but then Alex came along, so I'm not sure about that anymore. But hopefully, yeah, I'd love to compete in more competitions. Maybe go to the USA Memory Championship. I'm not going this year, but maybe
Mhm.
another year and keep competing in the Extreme Memory Tournament. And yeah, just try to be. I hope to be ranked maybe in the top 20 in the world, maybe by the end of next year as long as I haven't gone, I've only gone to the USA memory competition, so I haven't had gone a world ranking yet. But hopefully, I'll get one soon as I start to explore some of the other competitions. So yeah, just trying to get my feet wet in the memory world, and hopefully, I'll gain more experience, learn more from the other competitors, and just try to improve the best way that I can.
Those are awesome goals to have, striving for the top, and of course, and the way I thought of it was, when I went to my first competition, which I only had 3 months of training, and Nelson was there, but I was like, I'm going to train to be the champion. If it was realistic or not, because Nelson had like a couple of years, of training compared to my 3 months. I still believe, I'm going to be the champion. I'm going to train like the champion. Because if you start training like you're going to be the champion, your scores will improve a lot more. When you're aiming for the
Yeah.
top. Besides, we're like, oh, I want to get like fourth. What kind of score do I have to get fourth? So it kind of just changes your mentality.
Hmm.
And so that's awesome to hear like your goals for where you want to go and what you want to achieve. Um, but where do you think memory competitions are heading in terms of like records? If it's going to become digital, things like that. Like, so where do you think they're going?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the XMT, Nelson's Extreme Memory Tournament. I've watched it, I've observed it. Like we live about 2 hours away from it, so it's pretty close to us. So we've drove down there the last few years. I've never competed, so this is my first year competing, but I just really love the format
Mm-hmm.
because I think watching people memorize, stare at a piece of paper, memorize numbers for an hour is definitely boring. I think everyone agrees on that. So I really like the digital, exciting head-to-head kind of matchup, and I think there definitely is a place for the marathon events and like the stuff that the World Memory Sports Council does. Some of their longer disciplines, I think it's cool and it's helps to see who's the best. But I think I definitely see the sport heading more digital and more into like making it kind of more cool. Like the XMT is really, my opinion, it's really cool. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
see everything on the screen, what they're getting right and wrong. The software is amazing. So yeah, I definitely see it going more digital and more head to head maybe. Like instead of just accumulating scores in each event and just seeing who has the top going actual head to head. It looks a lot more fun. You have a lot more strategy. Like, do I want to go faster than the other person, or do I want to hope that they mess up and that sort of thing. So yeah, I definitely see it going more digital soon. I even know that a lot of competitions, there's some and others in Germany are starting to
Mm-hmm.
do more digital, and I think
That's
it's
true.
it's it's in some way better. Yeah, so I see it going that way, more digital, and I think definitely in terms of records, someone will eventually have to make some insane record, but I think there's so much room to improve, even in especially in the marathon events, like that world record of 2,600 numbers in an hour by I think Long Feng. That was back 2011 or so, and then
Yeah,
it was just stuck there, and no one decided to break it. But then Alex comes along and does 3,000. So I was like, I think there's just so much room to improve in terms of records, and people will start training, and hopefully those types of scores will start making them want to train more and get better results, and then we'll see even higher scores.
that's true. That's true, and it'd be easier to also score, you know, because
Hmm.
now like the computer program would score it for you instead of taking like hours upon hours of everyone in the back room, checking everything.
Yes.
So it could speed it up, and especially when you're competing like that, like it kind of breaks your flow if they take so long or like they keep having problems. Like you kind of just get out of your rhythm, and so you're just
Yeah.
like waiting there. And I remember when I was in London or England for the World Memory Championship, and it took so long to like post the scores up, and like you're nervous because you're like, oh no, like did I mess up? Because like in your head you're going through like the journey, like I think I messed up in this location, or I'm not really sure, but I think so. You just get nervous. So it'd just be kind of cool to get your scores instantly. So we're like, oh, okay, there it is, or this is where I rank and things like that. So
Yeah.
just make it like go a lot smoother.
Mhm.
And I personally think the records will be broken a lot faster if it's digital, because you just go faster, just using a computer, pushing a button just to like move, and then you could chunk your numbers in the way you want to
Oh
for your
yeah, yeah.
cards, and so it'd just be a lot easier. Because for 3 digit, you would have to like kind of like measure out three, and then like move
Mhm.
along,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it takes time. Then you also have to worry about like, oh wait, did I did I skip one or something?
Yeah. I think maybe the one thing that would keep physical is the card memorization, the speed cards. I think it's just I think that's the most exciting event just because you actually see the
You
person
feel
going
it.
through the deck. So yeah, that'd just be I would like that maybe to be kept mostly physical deck of cards. But yeah, other than that, I definitely agree that digital is the future, and hopefully that World Memory Sports Council will start considering more how to make everything more online and digital
Yeah,
and stuff. Yeah,
start
and
picking up. Uh, so there's something I was going to ask you. Oh yeah, so you started getting into like mnemonics, started doing memory techniques, competition, stuff like that. What was the hardest part for you? The most difficult challenge you face when doing mnemonics?
yeah, that's a good one. So for me, the most difficult challenge was probably improving. So I learned the techniques really easily because everyone learns the basic techniques. You go into room, and then probably have you start memorizing 10 words or so. You link the words together, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah. So I got that down easily. But I think, yeah, my main challenge was like, how do I improve? So I got a great idea of great ideas from Moonwalking with Einstein, especially like the plateau breaker. I know Joshua Foer had a bunch of really good chapters on how to improve. Like, how do you make yourself better and keep pushing yourself to get to that next level? So, yeah, that was my hardest part. So when I started with cards, for example, I was down to 2 minutes or so, 2 minutes and I think 22 seconds exactly after maybe 15 to 30 days of training. And I was using PAL, but then I just got stuck. I couldn't memorize any faster. I just couldn't do anything. I think everyone hits this point at some part
yeah,
in their training. So I couldn't do it. And I think what pushed me over the edge was one, changing systems, but then doing the plateau breaker. So yeah, that was definitely the biggest challenge for me. Like, how do I improve and how can I be a lot more like consistent and keep getting better? And that's still what I try to do. Like, how do I keep pushing myself? Now I have a better formula, of course, but in the
hmm
beginning it was a little bit discouraging to kind of see my scores and stuff stagnant for a bit. But once I figured out how to overcome like that plateau and get off of it, then everything just got a lot better. So now that skill is definitely carried over into other things too. It's not just for um, memory training, and it works for a lot of other things. But yeah, that was probably my biggest challenge, just improving and getting better. But yeah, I think I've gotten a lot better at that. I think it's important like to know how to learn so you can just make everything go a lot quicker. It's just good for so many other things in life too.
And I totally agree with you on that because, like you said, everyone has plateaus, and it makes you sad. They're like, man, I thought I was gonna get a deck under a minute, but now I'm stuck like at 3 minutes or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't do it. It's just like impossible. Like you think it's just something you can't
Mhm.
really break, but when you start pushing yourself further and farther, then you can actually break it.
Yeah.
But you bring up a point that I find fascinating because I realize it too is that you could apply that idea into other areas of your life. So where have you applied that, I guess, plateau breaker into other areas?
That's a good question. um, so let's see. So I don't exactly always use that specific plateau breaker
Mm-hmm.
technique, but I think I forgot to mention something else that went along with it was deliberate practice, which is I think I sort of mentioned it earlier, is focusing on your air. So that goes hand in hand. Like after you do the plateau breaker, after you go super duper fast and then mess up a lot, you need to focus on why you're messing up. So that's the deliberate practice. I think it goes hand in hand with the plateau breaker technique. So yeah, so I haven't applied that like go insanely fast and mess up a lot to other things, but I've definitely applied more of a deliberate practice. So I play piano, so I used to just practice mindlessly, like just play whatever. But now
Yeah.
I try to focus, try to just think a little more about what I'm doing and what my hands are doing. So I'm not perfect yet. I'm still trying to work it out. But I think yeah, the idea of deliberate practice, focusing on mistakes, I'd use it for like basketball when I'm trying to shoot. Like what's going wrong with my mechanics and what singular thing do I focus on to make myself better. So yeah, that's mostly what I do, filling in those gaps and just getting to a pretty decent level of consistency. Yeah. But yeah, I do agree that definitely the skills that you learn from training your memory apply to so many other things, and even the things you reap from it, like the insane focus that you get, is definitely useful for so many other things too.
Yeah. For me, because I realized like, hey, I can start applying this to other areas. Because
Mhm.
initially, I got into memory because of working out, and that's a different story. But that's what I got into memory. But then doing memory training and stuff like that, eventually, I started applying my memory training like ideas like the plateau breaker and things like that to my working out. Like if I could only do lift 20 pounds in each arm like with a curl, you know what? I'm gonna start pushing myself to lift 25 and force my body to do it. I might only be able to do like 3 or 4 compared to like I could do 10 or 20 with 20 pounds, but eventually my body's will get strong enough to lift 25 pounds consistently, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely agree.
and so that's why I started doing it. I was like, this is so cool. Like I never thought anything from memory would be able to be applied to working out.
Mhm.
And so, I was just kind of excited, like, oh, this kind of affects other areas of your life when you start looking at it.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely agree. I think that concept of just getting better is super useful as long as you know exactly what you need to do. And yeah, I think that a lot of people, I think the number one thing that comes to mind when you mention like memory competitions, oh, you must have a great memory and everything. Like, yeah, well, it's okay, um, but the skills, like, there's so many other side effects and good side effects, like beneficial things that you get just from improving and training your memory, like creativity. It's better because you're constantly using your imagination more, and definitely for me, the big thing is focus. So I struggle with focus too. It's like just going on the internet and doing things like, oh, here's a YouTube video, I'm just gonna watch it, and then it turns into another one. So that focus of just focusing on that single thing to make yourself better, and that the state that I get myself into when I do memory training is really useful to get into that state for so many other things, because it just makes so much more productive. And yeah, I think that what you're saying about the plateau breaker and making yourself better is, I definitely agree. It's really, really important. Like so many people just do what they feel like doing, and that's why so many people get stuck and they can't do whatever they want because they just do whatever they feel like. So once you get your body out of oh, that comfort zone, if you push yourself and get out of that comfort zone, is definitely uncomfortable. It's no fun at all in the beginning, but after you just stay in there, if you force yourself to, yeah, you get a lot better at whatever you're doing. So yeah, it's great.
And so I think that's like a big idea and concept because people think that you improve your memory, you only improve your memory. That's all you improve. Like, it doesn't bleed out into other areas of your life. But the opposite is true. It does affect other aspects of your life, like you said, creativity and things like that, and focus. Because one time, for me, I got more creativity and imagination because that's all you're consistently doing when you're doing memory training. And so my aunt had this sliding door, and I guess like the lock mechanism broke, and so she was trying to fix it, but then it fell down the door, and so we tried to get the door off, the sliding hinge or whatever, the sliding thing, but we couldn't. And so my aunt was like, okay, now I have to go to the store and buy a new lock mechanism. And so for me, I was like, okay, started thinking crazy ways. How can we get this out? First, can you put your hand on the hole? No, it was too small. Okay, could we like tie a string around it and like lasso it and pull it out? It's like I can't. You don't know what position it is or how to see it, you know. So like no. Then eventually I was like, okay, what if you have a magnet and then you could connect it and pull it out? And by chance, my aunt had a magnet, and so we were able to tie it to a string, put it down, get the lock, and take it out. And so that was from memory training because it gave me more creativity and imagination to think in like new ways to kind of solve problem solving
Yeah.
skills. And so I think that's like an important thing to memory training that it does help you in other areas just besides improved memory.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that creativity, it really develops your creativity too. So I'm generally not like a super creative person, like into the arts and everything, but I think doing improved memory has definitely helped me. I'm able to visualize stuff better and come up with more generally like innovative, well not really innovative, but more creative solutions. Like a lot of the math problems and stuff I do, they require problem solving skills, and
Mm.
you can't see things just one way, so you have to look at it from many different angles. I think that's what essentially what memory training is. I try to connect things in as many ways. I look at all the different possibilities. What's the best way to link these two words together to make them memorable? And I just try to think of like what is the strongest link. So yeah, I definitely agree.
And and I'm glad that other people, I guess everyone in the competition world realizes that, but just like regular people don't because they just see us memorize a card and like that's cool, that's the only thing you can apply it to. And so, which brings me up to my next question because it's something I get all the time, and it's what's the difference between learning, memorizing, and application? In your opinion, what's the difference between those three things?
Yeah, so I think learning encompasses memorizing first. So memorizing is basically storing information so you can recall information. It doesn't mean that you know what it means or processing it. So I memorize stuff I have no idea what it means a lot of the time, but it's just there. I can recall it if you ask me what did I just memorize. I can recite whatever, all the different digits I memorized. I think learning includes memory, but it also includes some level of understanding and depth. So it includes more concepts and stuff. So you can't just get away with memorizing everything in school. Like you have to understand concepts, like in math, like memorizing. It's a little bit useful, but almost everything is like concepts and problem solving. So I think that learning also includes like how well you're able to understand concepts and tie it in. Like I think the memorizing the little facts, they supplement the concepts, but the concepts and those things, they're the big ideas. And I think that's one thing that's different between learning and memory. That learning, as long as we're talking, sorry, I'm just focusing on schoolwork, but learning also
Yep.
encompasses like that understanding. And then application, I guess, would be more like applying it, obviously applying it to different areas of your life. So like how can you take what you learn and use it in other things? Like it's kind of useless to just have a bunch of information stored up in your memory because you don't do anything with it. But if you figure out like a way to apply it to some other situation or to make something cool, like work on a project, yeah, I think that's more the application. I think it's important. Like a lot of schools nowadays, they're centered so much around just like the learning aspect of it, and oftentimes like application can be a little bit ignored. So I think yeah, it's definitely important, sometimes a little bit overlooked. So yeah, that's just my take on learning in general.
Which I like it. You could bring up a lot of good points to it. Like what I believe is like the basis of learning is like you said, memorizing. You have to be able to recall something to be able to use it in the
Yeah.
first place. Like you just need that basic ground. Um, but one thing like kind of I saw like in school was some people don't just apply information they know. They just want to memorize it so they could get through it.
Hmm.
And I think it kind of comes to like the type of person you are. That if you want to apply something, if you really want to learn something, you're going to start applying it. So it doesn't really matter if you have like these memory techniques because you're still going to apply. You're still going to think about how does this make sense in other aspects. But people who don't want to apply it, who have these memory techniques, will only use it just to memorize the information, just to like get by for the test or get by during school and things like that.
Yeah. So I think for me, a classic example would be computer science. So I'm learning computer science, and like you could pass a test, but I mean it's practically meaningless if you can pass a test. Even if you get a college degree in computer science, it doesn't mean a whole lot unless you can actually build that project, do whatever the employer wants. So yeah, I agree that like application is definitely important, and when you actually apply something, then you end up kind of learning and memorizing the
Mhm.
things anyway. So yeah, yeah, I think that's really good, and I hope more people will start focusing more on application, not just on like cramming and pass studying for a test. Because in the end, it's not too useful. Like you're probably going to forget that information eventually. But if you create like an experience or something, that's always a lot better.
That's which is true, and that's just something I always get when someone sees me memorizing or I'm like doing a speech or teaching people, is that memorizing is going to help you in school because you need to know how to learn and apply, and so that's just something that always came up. And for me, I was like, what do other people think about it? Like, because I know and like other people, that memory is just an integral part of it, of the learning process. It's not like the end all be all type thing. And so it's just good to hear your point of view. Let's see, just a couple more questions. Okay, what's the best part of having a fantastic memory besides having a good memory? Like, do you like you get dates out of it? Stuff like that. Like,
Well, I'll just focus first on one downside is that I can't make the excuse I forgot to my mom. So besides that, I think it's cool just to show off. I don't do a whole lot, but I think it's cool to tell people. Most fantastic thing, yeah. I think for me, I'm not like a big into like showing off on other people, but maybe I will soon because I'm
yeah,
getting better. But yeah, I think it's just besides like having that memory, I think it's just a cool thing in general. It makes me kind of unique. Like not a lot of people do this. So whenever someone hears about that you do memory competition, like, oh well, what's that? And it sparks curiosity and just I think makes you really stand out from the crowd because there's so knowing that there's so few people in the world who could do what you do is just it just sounds really cool and it feels good to do that too. Yeah, so I don't really know. Maybe as I start talking to more other people and getting involved, maybe with teaching and other stuff, then I'll start to find some other cool perks to having a good memory.
yeah.
But yeah, that's all for now.
Oh, what's the best thing you've learned because of your memory techniques and mnemonics? Like for me, I learned the periodic table of elements and their atomic masses just because I could. Just why not? Because I have this skill.
Yeah. So I haven't done a whole lot of just memorizing on the side. I don't really I don't know. I just don't like to do that for some reason. But one thing I have done is I compete in something called the National Bible Bee. So it's a competition where you memorize a lot of Bible verses. So I had to memorize 800 verses. So number one thing, like memory tech, I used to use rote and it was painful. But then I started using
Yeah.
memory techniques and I did about 403 days. So I think that's the best thing I've ever done with memory techniques. 400 verses. I sat in my room for 8 hours each day and just memorized and crammed. But I don't know. I don't. Yeah.
What?
Besides that, I don't do a whole lot. So, but yeah, I think that was probably one of the funnest things I've done with memory techniques in general. Besides the competition stuff.
What? That's absolutely phenomenal. 400 verses in 3 days? That's like, what is it? Like maybe
It's a lot
4,000
of.
words? Or like
Maybe I have no idea.
more? I have. Were you able to recall the verse if you were given the verse's number? Or
Most of
just.
the time, yeah. So it was definitely not perfect, but it was centered around like bio memorization and study. It was in November of last year, and I did all the verses. I think, yeah, I did most of them. I finished in less than a week, the 800 verses assigned. But yeah, those first 3 days, I did half of them. So yeah, I was able to recall most of them. But I know, I don't know if I would have been able to match every single verse with the number since I don't usually. I normally would try to do the references a little bit later. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think it was just fun to do. I know I would have no way I could have done that without memory techniques. Like it would have taken forever. Like I could probably only do. I used to be able to do maybe one verse every 3 or 4 minutes, but now I can do a verse every minute or so. So it's definitely a lot cool, and it just shows like how much memory techniques can speed up learning and anything in general. Like text, I find text is pretty difficult to memorize generally, but once get the techniques down, it's not that bad
Mhm.
actually. So, yeah.
And you get to see all those cool stories too that you're creating, right? So that's fun.
Mhm.
And so, what I guess what is the best story you had to come up with to remember a piece of information? Like, what was the funniest or scariest, or
Oh,
what? Like,
man,
what was just the best?
man, that's a tough one. I'm not sure yet. So for me, I know a lot of people use like a lot of bizarre imagery, so I don't do that for some reason. I think it takes too long personally, but I tend to make very like logical images. So mine normally are not too exciting. So I just try to picture like an interaction between stuff like or a logical story. But I think the funniest thing was I had to memorize the words, I think icicle and politician or something. So then I just imagined one of my friends singing Let It Go and looking like a politician with, I don't know, one of the presidential candidates or something. It was just really dumb, but it was funny. I don't I don't know. Sometimes I do make bizarre images like that, but yeah, it's kind of rare, so I'm not exactly sure, but I think yeah, it's funny to come sometimes like the weirdest things just pop into your brain like when you hear something like I think of the word, I don't know, if I think of a certain word, like maybe if it's an adjective or something, I just immediately think of a friend who displays that characteristic or something. So yeah, it's pretty funny how like my brain is like so connected. You can just
Yeah.
think of random stuff that just somehow leads you back to the original information. But
Oh, that's awesome. Uh, that's interesting because, like you said, most people make crazy weird imagery. Like myself personally, like you never picture Elmo riding a hot dog into battle. Like you never picture shit like
yeah,
that.
a few times, not too much. I don't know. But yeah, I just generally focus more on logical images. I think I read it on Alex Mullen, World Memory Champion, his blog. He posted something about that. He found that I think Boris Conrad, he's a neuroscientist, memory guy. He
Mhm.
found that the best images, the best memorized used, are not always bizarre, crazy imagery, but sometimes they're more connected with logic and emotion. So I try to focus a lot on that. So I get myself involved a lot in the stories that I make. So like sometimes people just say, so yesterday I had to, and when I was doing words, I had to picture the words page and strike. So most people would probably just picture like, I don't know, a piece of paper and then strike, I don't know, maybe like an umpire saying strike or something,
Mhm.
but I try to get myself involved in it. So I would imagine myself like throwing a ball and hitting the strike zone on a piece of paper. So whenever I get myself involved, it kind of creates like a different feel towards it. So yeah, I think I have a little different approach in memorizing from some people where it's more kind of intuitive and I rely a little bit on my natural memory to kind of lead me back to the word.
Mhm.
Like an example would be like albatross. So if I had to imagine the word albatross, I just picture a bird, and then when my mind comes back, then I just find the word albatross for some reason. But yeah, I just tend to make my images a little bit more logical or more centered maybe around emotion and feeling. So it's definitely hard to do and it's not as consistent, but I don't know, it just works a little better for me. And yeah, I think that's why some people like to use people. Like I know you use PAO, so people are definitely cool because even though they all maybe look generally similar, but they have unique characteristics
Mhm.
that you kind of
Mhm.
connect with and kind of exploit those unique aspects about each person when you're memorizing.
Yeah, totally. That's one of the reasons I use it. Because it was like, when you have like someone like Scar from Lion King compared to your grandma, it, they're just different feelings attached with each one, right? So
Mm,
that's what makes it like easier. Um, but I think when I'm actually learning something, that's when I really make the stories crazier.
yeah.
But when I'm doing competition, I don't have time, and so like for random words, it's whatever. Like the first association pops up, I just connect it. Like I don't really
Mhm.
think too hard. Like does this make sense? Or it's like whatever, because you don't have enough time to
Yeah.
start thinking about like, oh, does this make sense? Or can I use the whole word? It's like whatever comes to mind. You just have to
Yeah,
stick with it.
definitely. Yeah, when I'm learning long-term stuff, I have more time. I'm not
Mhm.
bound by time restraints. So yeah, I generally make my things more interesting and try to add stuff. Maybe I'll try to like sense it with I'm big into like hearing, so I don't know. For me personally, I like sounds. when I'm memorizing, it just kind of I don't know it, but I do incorporate I think a lot of sounds into like auditory associations in.
Mhm.
So I like that too. Like I don't have much time when I'm doing it in competition, but when I'm just memorizing on my own for school or something, yeah, I can add a lot. I can embellish the story, make it more
Mhm.
interesting, add more different aspects, and yeah. So I definitely agree. But I think it's cool like to see how all that translates into the competition when you have the time restraint, but your brain is just able to think so quick and
Mhm.
think of that association and link it. It's definitely really cool.
And that is, it's just absolutely amazing when you start, seeing that in different, like in the competition when you're doing it, especially. And what you mentioned about like auditory, a lot of people just like kind of focus on the visual aspect of it. They're like, I need to see this person or see this object doing that. But I think people miss out on, like, I guess, better imagery when they forget the other senses you have. And I personally use auditory too. Like for one of my images for cars is like a trumpet, and so like I might not even see the trumpet or anything when I go back to the location, but like I hear it. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, there was a trumpet here, and so that kind of does help you along the
yeah,
way.
yeah. I actually am not too good at visualizing stuff. I don't know. When I think of stuff, I don't necessarily think of an image. So, well, as I was saying, I kind of tend to focus more on maybe like auditory stuff and actions. I like actions a lot, even though I don't really see them. So like the word flexibility I had to memorize the other day, so I can't think of really anything. If I had time, I could think of like a visual image, like an acrobat being all flexible, but I just had to think of something. So I just felt like what does it feel like to bend something and it bounces back? Like I just thought of something like what does that exactly feel like to be flexible? Like I couldn't think of an image, so I just thought of what it feels like, and for some reason it did work and I was able to remember it. So my
Yeah.
associations are really weird. I think that's cool though. Like everyone has their own unique approach to
Mm-hmm.
memorizing. So mine just tend to be more maybe emotion based or like how does stuff feel instead of how does it look. But yeah, I think as once you tell people that you don't just have to picture, you can do so much other
Mm-hmm.
stuff to remember too. That makes them a lot more creative and it makes it a lot easier to remember stuff because different things work for different things. Like sometimes I like the visual is the best way to picture
Mm-hmm.
two nouns or something, but if you get like a verb or an adjective, then you have to generally be a little more creative in how you want to link stuff together. So yeah.
And that's just cool to hear that different perspective because for me, it's just mostly just like imagery, but to hear you like doing these
hmm
different things, like you feel it, I'm, I might try that just to see how that goes.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not too good at visualizing stuff and seeing it later. Like I had a problem in the beginning that I would visualize things and then I would draw so many blanks. Like I don't know, I would just visualize a bunch of stuff and come back to it later, remember nothing, and didn't see any images. So I think that kind of made me think a little bit like, what else can I do to make it more memorable? And for me, that the big thing was actually linking to the location. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like extremely picky in choosing locations now, and everything needs to be like very different. If it's not, then I
Yeah.
have to make it different. So that was the big thing. I would just picture stuff happening on my desk, not but now I think of like maybe stuff happening on the keyboard and the keys moving up and down or something, and I just that was a big thing, like kind of seeing how stuff interacts with location. That really helps for long-term memory. Like eventually maybe the image will fade, but if you get the location in there, then you have another aspect that you can rely on, and it's not too much more effort to link to a location. So that was really big for me as well.
And I guess that's like one of the biggest things to memory, just in general. You do whatever works for you. Just because it
hmm
works for this other person, just because this other
Yep.
person may be better than you, doesn't mean that it's like the law and you have to follow it. Just
Yeah,
kind of do what you do.
exactly. Yeah, so I did PAO in the beginning. I only did it because a lot of good people were using it. Um, but then I realized like, oh, it doesn't really matter like how many good people are doing it if it doesn't work for me. So yeah, that's really true. Like there's so much experimenting involved and I'm really like amazed by those people like Ben Pridmore who are able to come up with invent their own systems and take those crazy risks to see if it would work. Like no one ever knew that a two card system would ever actually work, but he just decided to go for it. So yeah, I think that's really cool. People are constantly making improvements and finding what works for them and sharing it, and then it works for others. People take a part of it, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually I have so many different ideas coming at me that I can kind of take all of them and find my own like style or approach to memorizing.
And that's just like the most important part when you're trying to do anything. Just get all the information and then see, oh, like this, take a little bit of this, take a little bit of this, try this, and kind of figure out your way. Because I think I started with I think just a P person. I was like, that's too many locations. Like, no, 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 no. So I did a PO.
Hmm.
And 26, that's all right because then I started using it more for like numbers too, so like interchangeable. But then I moved to a PAO because I wanted less locations. So because like you said, I was picky about my locations in my journey. I'm like, no, no, it has to be like unique and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
so that's just probably an important aspect is just figuring out what works for you and just rolling with it.
Yeah.
And and if something new comes along, look at it, try it out, and then try to incorporate it. If it doesn't work, just leave it and just keep
Hmm.
going on your way.
Yeah.
Okay, Everett, I have one last
All right.
question.
All right.
This is the most important question ever asked in an interview. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Your face just looked like so serious. Relax. Okay. Who is a better rapper, Big Bird or Darth Vader? Go.
Um, Darth Vader.
Why is
I
that?
don't know. He just is. He's Darth Vader. He could. I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard them rap. Maybe I've seen a YouTube video of them. I don't know.
No, they
Darth Vader.
never rap. I'm just saying,
I like.
who's
I
the.
like Darth Vader. I don't know. I just like him in general. So he's a lot cooler than Big Bird. He would. Yeah, he would crush him. He would probably like use the Force to
That's
manipulate
not.
Berg into rapping really bad. I don't know. Yeah, I like Darth Vader though, so I like him in everything. So
But
he wins.
Big Bird grew up on the street. He literally
Hey,
grew up on the street.
I
Right?
guess that could work. I don't know. I just like Darth Vader.
Well, okay then.
It's a
So you,
better rap.
Darth Vader is a better rapper than
He would
Big
have a
Bird.
cooler voice too.
That robot voice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That'd be a lot cooler.
All right. So I just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to answer some of my questions and just talk about it because I think a really important thing is a lot of mental athletes don't have other people to really talk to on a day-to-day basis because everyone around them like you're crazy or I don't want to do it. So it's like you don't really have the opportunity to really like just talk to
Yeah,
someone and just like see what's up. And so I really do appreciate you taking your time to
yeah.
talk
It
to me.
was awesome. I love talking with you. It's great.
Okay, and so this is the first interview of many where I just ask, just different questions about, memory, different aspects of memory, like
Hmm.
other their lives and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed being the first guest
Yeah,
on the
it's
show
great.
or
So
episode.
you're
Or
gonna post it on your website or something, or
uh, yeah, I'll find somehow website, YouTube. We'll see how it works. But yeah. So
yeah,
thank you very much.
yeah. It's great to be here. I enjoyed it a lot.